My name is Landon Simpson, and welcome to a brand new show here at KBVR-TV. Inside the silver screen will serve as an insight into all things cinema. Every other Thursday, we will be delving into different movies and scenes. This week, we have an interview with Oregon State film professor Zachary Price, as well as a scene breakdown and a foreign film recommendation. Expect varying segments each week as we analyze and break down the art form that we all love so much. We start with an interview that I had with Dr. Zachary Price.
My guest today is Dr. Zachary Price, a film professor and research associate here at Oregon State. Welcome to the show, Dr. Price. This is our first show. We're glad to have you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we're just going to start off. We have about different sections of questions, and we're going to start off with some general questions. Can you tell us a little bit about your path to becoming a teacher here and how you got so interested in film in the first place?
Yeah, it's not a straightforward path, actually. So in undergrad, I was actually a literature major, and I was studying mostly like 19th century Gothic literature. So I was reading things like Frankenstein and Dracula, some of the classics. And I found that they were way weirder and like more unsettling than the like contemporary popular culture versions of them. And so I was really interested in how the books portrayed this sort of like new, this sort of new modernized, secularized medicine as trying to understand weird supernatural parts of the body. But I ended up switching to film a bit my senior year when there was like this aha moment when I signed up for a program to teach high schoolers in the sort of local area on a course on horror film. And I immediately I got like the adrenaline rush from teaching, but I realized that I was interested in how the sort of early Gothic literature sort of led to our contemporary horror film stuff. So I kind of switched my thesis to talk about horror movies there. And then I spent a year, I took kind of a year off of academics to work in a production studio that was attached to a university, and we were making mostly documentaries. And I'm glad I did it because I realized I kind of hated it, or at least I realized that the kind of point of all the documentaries we were making was they were almost like marketing or branding for the university. Like I kind of felt like it was my first encounter really with the financing behind the movie industry and how important that is. And I realized it was interesting, but I didn't want to like be limited by it. I wanted to study it. And so I decided to go to graduate school. I spent about 6.5 years finishing my PhD at Cornell. And I really went through more of the sort of industry history around contemporary film. And now I'm here. So it was a long path, but I got here eventually.
Yeah, definitely. We're glad to have you here. And then, what is your favorite foreign film that you've seen?
Also really hard. I'm going to list two really quickly.
Okay.
Shoplifters, I really liked, which I think did not do very well on the award circuit. And I think it was like 2 years ago it came out. But it's about like a family that sort of like adopts or like illegally adopts orphaned kids in Japan. And it's really great. Then the second one is Burning, which is a South Korean film that is like, it's kind of like the premise is it's like off of a Faulkner short story, Barn Burning, but it's not actually that. It's like a weird thriller where you're not sure, a person disappears and you're not sure if the other main character killed them or not. And you're just trying to figure it out the whole time.
Yeah, another movie on my watch list. It's actually on Netflix, so I gotta watch it soon.
Yeah, it's really good.
I saw it the other day, and I was like, should I watch this? And I can't remember what I watched instead, but I was close. And then kind of going to your research here at OSU and maybe at Cornell, can you just tell us a little bit about your research and kind of what it's about and maybe your thesis a little bit that you did?
Yeah, very broadly, I guess. I look at visual effects, particularly digital visual effects of the last like 30 years, and how I would say how they function to alter our perception of bodies on screen. So, I mean, just maybe a couple examples will help, which is like nowadays, Benedict Cumberbatch can be a dragon, with performance capture and a small army of animators behind him. Or Robert De Niro can de-age himself to be about 30 again in The Irishman. Or even, I don't know, thinking about a couple Star Wars movies, they can sort of reanimate a dead actor into the story using old footage. So at some level, we can really think about these visual effects as kind of opening the limitations, like bodily limitations that I think actors have, or even how we think about bodies on screen or how they're recorded. So that's sort of like the big umbrella topic of everything I do.
Yeah. And then I have a few questions about the film industry and where it's going, and where your opinions are on just the future of it, especially affected by the pandemic. So my first question is, what are your opinions on HBO Max's recent deal? For our viewers that don't know, HBO Max just had a deal with a lot of major production studios where they will be releasing new movies exclusively on their service the same day they come out in theaters. So I was just thinking, what are your opinions on that? And how do you think it's going to affect the industry?
Yeah, so it's like a financial story. So the answer is going to be kind of like a financial answer, I think. Crazy thing that happened. I'm actually excited. What I think it does is I think the story clues us into kind of like who owns Hollywood. We normally think Hollywood is like a bunch of very large studios that are like these sort of big monolithic things. But actually, they're owned by telecommunication companies. So in the case of HBO Max, Warner Brothers is the studio, but they're owned by AT&T. And so it's an interesting conflict of interest, like in the sense that what AT&T wants is not the same as what Warner Brothers wants. And their interests are sort of often in conflict. And in this case, Warner Brothers is a studio. It wants to sell its movies. It wants to keep the talent, so directors and actors and all of that. But AT&T's goal is not to make a profit off of the movies. And so if you think about the finances, one of the big ways that actors and directors get paid is something called a back pay. So what that means is they will take less money up front, but they will recuperate a lot of money based on how well the movie does in theaters, the ticket sales. But if you bring everything to streaming, there are no, it's very complicated to figure out what are the ticket sales of that. And so there's a big sort of worry that all of that back pay will get lost. And so it's really screwing over the sort of talent of Warner Brothers.
Do you think we are seeing the last few years of movie theaters, or do you think they're going to still survive?
Oh my gosh, yeah. The amount of people who are worried about this, I mean, for good reason, but it's like basically all Hollywood can worry about right now is like, oh my gosh, will we never return to theaters? I think no, but let me qualify that, which is I think the like big movie theater chains are going to be hit really hard and not totally be able to recuperate. So like, AMC, all the ones that are in like all the cities but I think ironically, some of the smaller, art house theaters that have a really kind of like loyal community sort of customer, I think they're actually going to do okay. Well, most of them. I think half will die, but the other half will I think rise up because they're again like community spaces, I think, for a lot of people, and they're craving that now. So I think some of the big chains are going down. I think some of the smaller art house theaters are going to actually do better.
And then the last question, I should touch on this really quickly. It doesn't have to be a super long thing, but so what did you think about Tom Cruise's screaming fit on the new Mission Impossible movie?
So I read about this just really briefly. So he was like, my understanding, did he like yell at the film crew once he saw they weren't
I think
following COVID?
The story behind it was, I think a crew member wasn't wearing a mask. And then he went on the huge tirade that he went on and just cursed and yelled. And just got super angry, and I don't know, he was going off the rails, I think. But
Well, one thing I'm sure I always think about it kind of in terms of money, which is like Tom Cruise has a lot of financial stake in what Mission Impossible 79, whatever, like being successful. He may even be a producer on this movie, I think. He may not just be the lead actor. He may also he may have a lot of financial stake in it. And so that's clearly why he's just like yelling at people. And I always feel like there's such a kind of like, it's almost unfair in the sense that there's such a power difference between like a Tom Cruise and like the person holding the boom, you know, like there's like, yeah, that person should be wearing a mask, but like that person probably doesn't have healthcare, or like, you know, like they're not sort of like equal players here. And so it's just like someone who's like really has a lot of power yelling at someone who doesn't, kind of to vent their anger at COVID, I think.
Yeah, I kind of am on the same line of thinking there. But anyways, I really appreciate you coming on to the show and giving your insight into some of these things. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for interviewing me. It was a pleasure.
Today, we are going to be analyzing the infamous coin toss scene from the 2007 film No Country for Old Men, directed by Joel and Ethan Coen. On the right, we have Anton Chigurh, a stoic, stone-cold hitman who has come across our gas station clerk on the left. The majority of the scene takes place with the camera between the characters and the shot-reverse shot format that the Coen brothers are famous for. The first thing to notice in this scene is the tonal contrast between the two characters. The clerk wears lighter clothes that tend to blend in with the background, creating near full affinity. But Chigurh pops out. He wears all dark clothes and stands in front of everything else, contrasting. With him as the focal point, the shot on Chigurh is therefore more visually intense, highlighting the danger he presents. The clerk tries to lighten the mood, but Chigurh denies this, halting the release of tension. Then, he places the wrapper on the counter. He lays his trash out on the counter, and the clerk simply watches it unfold. Here we get our ominous question, and like the audience, the clerk is wondering where this is going.
The most you ever lost in a coin toss.
Then there's a subtle pull-in. You can see the panic rising in the clerk as the shot gets more intimate. Oftentimes, exciting dialogue comes from disagreement. When Chigurh says, "Yes, you did," a few things are happening. We've established that he holds the power in the scene, and now he is taking complete control. If you look at this exchange like a boxing match, the clerk has just been put in the corner. But disagreement isn't enough in itself to amplify the scene. The rest of the line,
"You've been putting it up your whole life, you just didn't know it,"
adds some clarity, but it is still subtle. Imagine if Chigurh had just said, "If you call it wrong, I'm going to kill you." Sure, there would be some surprise, but surprise, not suspense. By remaining in the realm of uncertainty, the tension rises, there's further room to grow, and Chigurh comes off even more horrifying.
1958. It's been traveling 22 years to get here. And now it's here. And it's either heads or tails. And you have to say, call it.
This line brings into question the movie's greater themes about fate. An element of fate has brought the coin to this destination, yet Chigurh still leaves the decision up to the man. Yet that decision is purely 50-50 probability. Fate, in many cases, is another word for probability. The pressure heats up even more with Javier Bardem's delivery and the tension that hangs on the words, uninterrupted by overt music or dialogue that is too on the nose. The man calls it, and we get a repose on Chigurh's expression, unchanging. This pause could simply add tension, but it is clear that Chigurh is thinking about something. The man seemed to make his call on a whim, which seems to bother Chigurh to an extent. But the other layer is that the decision is completely trivial, a 50-50 chance, further playing into the message of fate holding control. The man called it, but in the end, it really didn't matter. It came down to fate. Chigurh reveals the coin, and we get a quick cut back to him with a slight smirk. It is clear that Chigurh has a lesson to teach. He suggests the man was just saved by fate, and that the quarter saved his life through luck. But what he says next is vitally important.
Don't put it in your pocket, sir. Don't put it in your pocket. It's your lucky quarter.
Where do you want me to put it?
Anywhere not in your pocket. Or it'll get mixed in with the others and become just a coin. Which it is.
Now, what does this line really mean? Well, it appears that Chigurh is suggesting that the quarter doesn't mean anything going forward. It is just like any other quarter, fated to land on heads or tails, and you don't have control over that. Whether or not it was lucky in this single scenario is not relevant to the man's future swings of fate. Then why shouldn't he just put it in his pocket? Chigurh is questioning the importance of the man's fate. Our next segment on Inside the Silver Screen is called Overcoming the 1-Inch Barrier. The name of this segment derives from South Korean Oscar-winning director of Parasite, Bong Joon-ho's statement about how many great movies are accessible once you overcome the 1-inch tall barrier of subtitles. So fittingly, in this segment we will recommend a foreign film based on a popular American film. This week we will be looking at David Fincher's Zodiac and previously mentioned Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder. Currently streaming for free on Amazon Prime, 2007's Zodiac recounts the story of the Zodiac killer in the San Francisco Bay Area during the late 1960s and early 1970s. The film focuses on the police investigation surrounding the infamous serial killer, as well as on the letters that the killer sent to the San Francisco Chronicle newspaper over the course of a decade. Mark Ruffalo portrays police investigator Dave Toschi, while Robert Downey Jr. and Jake Gyllenhaal portray two workers at the San Francisco Chronicle. It is directed by the famously precise David Fincher, most known for his work on Seven, Fight Club, The Social Network, and Gone Girl. In an interview with Birth Movies Death in 2019, Bong Joon-ho even expressed his love for Zodiac and said he was, quote, amazed at how Fincher could control the overall pace of his films so well, end quote. Joon-ho perfected his own murder mystery piece 4 years before Zodiac was released when he made Memories of Murder, a perspective into the investigation of the first serial murders in South Korean history. Taking place from 1985 to 1991, the set of murders puzzled the police for many years. The plot of the film surrounds two morally questionable detectives who are forced to clean up their act when a third detective from Seoul comes to their province to help their investigative efforts. Viewers will recognize actor Song Kang-ho as one of the detectives. Kang-ho played the father of the Kim family in Parasite. Critics have remarked on the similarities in storytelling and tone between Zodiac and Memories of Murder. While Memories of Murder is not quite as historically accurate as Zodiac, it makes up for it with a bit of faster pace and a prominent sense of dread hanging over the entire movie. The dark and gritty cinematography also helps to bring the viewer into the bleak and overcast South Korean province that serves as the setting. If you enjoy crime dramas or thrillers in general, I urge you to overcome that 1-inch barrier of subtitles and rent Memories of Murder on Amazon Prime or wherever you stream movies now. With that, our inaugural episode of Inside the Silver Screen has come to a close. Our next episode will be available Thursday, February 4th, where we'll be delving deeper into the cinematic craft. Until then, be sure to subscribe to the KBVR-TV channel and check out the other shows like Geeking Out About It, Locals Live, and a variety of other content. On top of that, go out and watch some more movies.